Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. Yes, I am very much aware there is a lot going on in the news right now. Rafah is getting bombed to smithereens, Trump got convicted, the general election is officially set, well, has been for several months now, and I got myself a lot of thoughts about this. I got a whole list of things written down of what to talk about in future videos, so bear with me, those will be coming soon, but let's just put all the current events aside and just focus on today, and solely and specifically just today, because today, as you can tell from what day it is from the video's upload date, today is a very special day. This current day, according to the upload date of this video, marks the 80th anniversary of arguably one of the great pieces of evidence that the United States of America is an extraordinarily fucking remarkable country. D-Day turns 80 years old today. Now, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, I don't understand why you don't know your World War II history, go back to school, but what makes D-Day so special compared to the other Allied victories that happened in World War II was that this actually marked a turning point in the Western Front of World War II. You know, France, Western Europe, that general area. It marked a turning point in the war, specifically in that area, and was one of the first major victories with the United States being involved in World War II, if not at least one of the more famous ones. But when we're talking about D-Day, this is a day celebrating courage and heroism, the bravery, the heroism, courage, and sacrifice on that day of young men who were around my age at the time, early 20s, late teens, who walked onto beaches, who crawled onto beaches, hanging on for dear life, sacrificing their own lives in order to fight off Nazis, in order to fight off authoritarianism, to fight off actual fascism taking place, a despicable regime that disdained and abused human rights, a regime that was committing actual and literal crimes against humanity, ruled over by a deranged madman who wished to dominate an entire continent and the entire world with an evil ideology. The unthinkable courage, bravery, and heroism these people had on that day, they did significantly way fucking more than I will ever do my entire life. These guys had achieved so much that it's not even fucking funny. And not many people really have the privilege to actually speak to a veteran who was in the military at the time of D-Day. I myself am a grandson of one of these people who stormed these beaches, but there are a ton of interviews that you can watch on YouTube of people interviewing D-Day vets, link in the description to a few, and some of these soldiers talked about their experiences, and I'm not going to play some of those clips on the video, but I really want you guys to really watch these videos, because when you hear what these men went through in order to preserve our liberty for the US and for the rest of the Western world, it should remind us how precious these freedoms and these liberties are, and how courageous and brave so many of these men have been in defense of those liberties. I remember seeing, 5 years ago, back during the 75th anniversary, Ben Shapiro had one of those veterans on his Sunday special, and one of them almost started crying, saying that there was a chance that he might not return home again. Imagine saying that. Imagine saying that there is a chance that you will never return home and see your family again, and you're sacrificing your own life and being a martyr to help others in times of crisis, preserving your country's liberties and freedoms, and for doing good for the entire world. Tell me right now that that doesn't scream heroic, brave, or whatever synonym of courage that I can even fucking think of. That's what describes some of these people. I mean, the bravery of these soldiers. That was the sacrifice that was made on that day by these patriots to preserve our freedoms. And by the way, that particular veteran, the guy who was claiming that he might not return home, the one Ben Shapiro was interviewing 5 years ago, I believe he also went on to serve in the Battle of Okinawa as a medic after that, if I remember correctly. But still, this was just like, just ridiculously gargantuan heroism of this entire generation that went overseas to fight not just for America's constitutional liberties here at home, but also for the God-given and unalienable freedoms and liberties for the rest of Western society. The order that General Dwight D. Eisenhower was out of the Allied forces sent on the day of June 6, 1944, and as to why this day is just so important, here's what happened on D-Day and why this day is very special and very important. France fell to the Nazis in 1940. 1 year after the invasion of Poland, which kicked off World War II, the Allied forces arranged a cross-channel invasion of the German occupying forces of Western Europe, essentially codenamed Operation Overlord, by May of 1944. Now, this has not been the first attempted invasion off the coast of France. There was Operation Jubilee that happened a few years earlier to sort of as like an experimental attempt to see what would happen in case of any amphibious invasion. It was meaningfully designed to not become a foothold or a beachhead invasion. It was mostly meaningfully designed to basically, I guess, learn and strategize for the future and whatnot. But keep in mind, Operation Overlord was not the first attempted invasion of the Nazi-occupied French coasts. Almost 3 million Allied troops were amassed in southern England, which was the largest armada in human history, made up of more than 4,000 American, British, and Canadian ships, and over 1,200 planes against the tight background of unsure prognosis, uncertain weather forecasts, disagreements in strategy, and other related timing and planning dilemmas. General Ike decided before dawn on June 5th to proceed with Operation Overlord. Later that same afternoon, much more polished in his printed order of the day for June 6, 1944. He jotted to note intended for release, accepting full responsibility for the decision to launch the invasion on that day, early in the morning, and full blame for the push to create a foothold on the Normandy coast fail. Here is what he wrote to all the men who are about to invade and storm what was, quite frankly, I would believe to be one of the most heavily guarded and armed areas in human history. Here is what Eisenhower had to say. Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hope and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you, in company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on all other fronts. You will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and the security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940 and 41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the German great defeats in open battle, man-to-man. Our air offensive have seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion of duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us beseech the blessings of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking. Those were the words of General Ike that were said moments before the great invasion that would take place on the shores of Normandy. And the battle itself was absolute fucking carnage. It was just absolute fucking carnage. It was a massacre. The battle was a brutal massacre. The Normandy landings and the beach invasion of D-Day were absolutely catastrophic and viciously chaotic. If you've ever watched the movie Saving Private Ryan, or another movie which released much earlier called The Longest Day, you can see what this was like, at least in a mild but still accurate sense. The first wave of landing forces suffered terrible losses, particularly US troops in Omaha Beach and the Canadian division to Juno Beach. Thanks to raw perseverance, determination, and grip, the Allies overcame these vital initial setbacks and took hold of all 5 Normandy beaches by twilight of June 6. The Germans were so shocked by the attack that they did not fully mobilize to defend the coast and were ultimately doomed to defeat. Like, they completely underestimated the attack that was happening to them at the time, and they thought that this was actually barely a feint, like this was a nothing burger, and they completely got shellacked as a result, which is exactly what led to their defeat on D-Day and the liberation of France. The first Allied cemetery in Europe was dedicated just 2 days after the D-Day invasion on June 8, 1944. Since that day, military officials, memorial organizations have tried to come up with a definitive account of all the Allied D-Day deaths in order to properly honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. In Virginia, there is a memorial dedicated to D-Day called the National D-Day Memorial, where there are around 4,400 names enshrined in bronze plaques representing every Allied soldier, sailor, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen who died fighting on that day. That figure was the result of years of extensive research. When the memorials were first being planned in the late 80s, 90s, and 2000s, there were widely different estimates. German casualties on D-Day were somewhere between 4,000 and 9,000 killed, wounded, or missing. The Allies captured 200,000 German prisoners of war, and thousands of troops perished during the months-long Normandy campaign. Now, despite D-Day being one of the most influential turning points for World War II, Russian state media is saying, and believe me, they do this every year, that D-Day was not really significant. They also say that the US dropping the atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki didn't matter either, and that what really mattered, and what really was the true turning point according to Russian state media, was the Eastern Front. Well, yeah, the Eastern Front really did matter a hell of a lot. You know, the Red Army holding back the Nazis during the Battle of Stalingrad was one of the major turning points of World War II and was an enormous factor of Hitler and the Nazis' eventual loss. I think the Battle of Stalingrad was, in fact, one of the first major victories of the Allies, if I remember correctly. But yeah, you have Russian state media, as well as even some, communistic leftoids, trying to discredit the US's involvement, calling us the actual evil Nazis, and saying that it was the Soviets that are the reasons why the Allies won World War II. Yeah, I understand that the Soviet Union played a major role in World War II, but keep this in mind. Let us not forget that the Soviets were on the side of Hitler and the Axis powers, all the way up until the point that Hitler and the Nazis actually invaded the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, along with other allies, were being held up by Lend-Lease material provided by the United States before they even entered. The United States were fighting off Japan, which is at the other flank of the Soviet government, and the United States dropping the nukes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki is what really caused the end of World War II. That's how this iconic picture was created, by the way. So when people discredit the contributions of the United States in World War II, they're just being fully dishonest and disingenuous, as most anti-American leftoids, the Russian government, and its state media is today, obviously. The contributions of the United States to victory in Europe cannot be overstated. The contributions of the British, the Canadians, the Australians, and all the Allied forces to victory in Europe cannot be overstated. And the contributions of the folks who weren't even granted their full rights in the United States yet. There are a lot of people today who are paying tribute to a lot of the African Americans that fought in World War II, like the Tuskegee Airmen, a group of African American Air Force men who went off to fight the Nazis, even though they were still subjugated to racism and segregation, because obviously segregation was still a part of American life in really deep and abiding way. Keep in mind, this was about 20 to 25 years before the Civil Rights Movement and the 1964 Civil Rights Act passing. There were even Native Americans who fought the Nazis in World War II, even though they too were abused in butcherous ways too. And the reason why so many of these people went over to fight the Nazis, even people who were disenfranchised in American society through racism and bigotry, is because they understood that America is in fact the greatest country in the world. America is the beacon of hope, the land of opportunity for everyone and for the rights of free will. They understood that the promise of America was great, important, and truly worth fighting for. The rights of the Constitution and the dreams of the Declaration of Independence are faithful, true, and eternal. And those things have to stand up in the face of shriveling fire from evil regimes raging from fascist Italy to the Japanese Imperial Empire and to Nazi Germany. That right there is heroism that obviously we need to always remember and continue celebrating, not just on Veterans Day, not just on Memorial Day, D-Day, or any day of remembrance for World War II like VE Day or VJ Day, but every single day, especially as the greatest generation dies off. And unfortunately, it's really hard to find World War II veterans and even Holocaust survivors these days, because many of them are just so old that there are very few remaining survivors from the Holocaust or survivors from the beaches of Normandy. I mean, you'd have to be born in the 20s to actually remember the Holocaust or World War II in general. Some of these individuals are already approaching 100 years old, by the way. So not that many people have had the privilege to actually speak to a veteran of World War II. That's why it's such an honor to be a grandson of one of these World War II veterans, of one of these men who stormed these shores on this day. And we should also remember that there are people who are committing acts of great heroism today. The members of the U.S. military today are no different from the members of the U.S. military back then. If you watch some of these interviews that I have linked below, if you talk to any World War II veteran or any veteran from any past war in general, and you ask them, what's your hope for America? They will always point to the members of the U.S. military today who are volunteering and are doing something that I, unfortunately, was not brave enough to do. Even though, if I'm being fully truthful, they have absolutely no business being there, and there's no reason we should be involved in any wars at the moment. But despite that, these people still deserve the respect and all the support that we have. These are people who are doing something extraordinary every single day. And we should give a big round of applause to all these people. We should take our hats off and pay tribute to these individuals because they are standing in the tradition, the greatest tradition of America, which is standing for freedom, standing for liberty, and justice for all, ready to answer freedom's call with their own life if need be. America remains the bright beacon of light. America remains the land of opportunity for everyone and anyone. America remains as the savior of World War II and the greatest nation in the world. D-Day is a reminder of that. The Warsaw Uprising is a reminder of that. An Allied victory of both world wars is a reminder of that. A democratic Germany, a France, or a Poland that doesn't speak German is a reminder of that. Anywhere that people live free is basically and pretty much essentially as an effect of the presence of the United States on this planet Earth. Thank God for the United States of America. Thank God for all the brave men and women in uniform of the United States who are brave to stand up for the calls of liberty, to stand up and let freedom ring. Thank God for the United States that continues to maintain the highest tradition of liberty and union. D-Day is a perfect reminder of that. And unfortunately, now you have a lot of people, particularly in my generation, who are being told to hate this country, to look at America as no different from Nazi Germany, to portray the United States as what the Axis powers were in World War II, to determine that the United States is a racist country founded by white capitalist Nazis in 1619, and that if you love the United States and respect the flag, you're automatically a Nazi. Yes, I get we don't have the cleanest history. I get that we're not a perfect country. Nobody is perfect in this world. There is no such thing as perfect. You're going to have dark moments in your history, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean you should make all the negative things the focal point of your country's history. Yeah, we were founded in 1619 because that's when the first African slaves came. Black Americans will never be successful here. We stole land from Native Americans, so now I have American guilt now. That shouldn't always be the case. Yes, we're involved in wars that we shouldn't be involved in the first place. That doesn't necessarily mean we're the worst country ever and that we're really bad. We are not perfect, and that's okay. God never intended us to be perfect. In order for there to be light, there must be shadows. But we still have moments in our history that if that never happened, who knows how differently the world would become. Like, what if the Axis power won World War II? It would be such a horrible and a terrible world to live in. And it is our job to educate everyone as independent content creators to not only love and respect the country, but to give people a reason why to love this country and why we should all look at this country as the pro-democratic, anti-racist, anti-authoritarian nation that is willing to fight for the freedoms of its citizens and everyone in the Western world and to preserve Western civilization. D-Day is also proof that America can overcome its flaws. Despite all the dark history that we have, segregation, slavery, and whatnot, we have overcome all of our flaws with the Civil Rights Act, the Reconstruction Amendments that were passed after the Civil War during the Reconstruction era, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Little by little, we have overcome, as a country, all of our flaws. We have become better each year. It has not always been a smooth ride, as we can tell. There are still some, moments like the Tulsa Massacre, Rosewood, nativism. But despite all the setbacks, we have grown to become better. And we have even taken the risk to go overseas to fight Nazis and liberate Europe. And what better way to do that than to celebrate and talk about D-Day? The day when young men, including young men of color oppressed by Jim Crow at the time, who never gave up hope for this country and Western civilization, who still believed in the American dream and understood the meanings of America, freedom, and liberty, and fight the Nazis who were evil, oppressive, and brutal. D-Day is a great reminder of that. Once again, let me reiterate, thank God. As always, thank God for the United States of America. Thank God for the United States of America. D-Day is a great reminder of that. And also, it is also, most importantly, a perfect reminder we ought to be the kind of Americans worthy of fighting for. That our rights and freedom are worth preserving. And that the Constitution of the United States, which was the sacred oath that us Americans swore to uphold, that the Constitution is worth protecting and defending. The rights in the Constitution ought to be viewed as inviolable, and that the era of great sensitivity, I think, needs to be held up against. The heroism of these past generations and the heroism of today's members of the military who are out there defending our rights to be complete fucking dumbasses every single day. And that's what makes today special. Not just to me, not just for this country, but for the entirety of Europe and for the entire world. If you're a veteran watching this, thank you so very much for our service. Thank you very much for fighting for our freedom and for our democracy. And may God bless you and your family. But yeah, with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you're new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the little notification bell. Be sure to follow me on all my social medias, links are in the description below. Share this video around with your friends, families, boyfriends, girlfriends, enemies, whomever. Definitely helps me out a lot, helps the video grow, and helps grow the channel if you were to share this video with whomever you know. I think it's absolutely important to talk about these historical days like D-Day, talk about World War II. I really want to start talking more and more about these historic events because unfortunately our education system here is pretty much flawed and not many people really know that much in terms of the happening that is going on in the world, past, present, and even the future. So this is not one of the last videos you're going to see from me of this kinds of topics. History has always fascinated me, so expect more of these videos relatively soon. And be sure, as always, leave all your comments down below. Do you guys have any family members that are veterans? Do you know anyone personally who is an active member of our military? please let me know. Don't forget to thank them for their service. If you have a family member who's a veteran, buy them a cake, take them out for dinner, do something good for them. Because again, as I stated before, these people, with all the heroism and courage that they have, they deserve all of our support. Those are the real people we should be thanking each and every single day. Thank them every day for their service. So to all the American and especially even the British and the Canadian soldiers who fought on the beaches of Normandy on that day, thank you so much for our service. Thank you very much to the British and Canadian soldiers and the rest of the Allied forces for helping us in this very difficult battle. France, Canada, Australia, and the UK, you guys all deserve just as much credit. So, anyways, guys, like, subscribe, ring notifications, and until then, take care, talk soon, and I'll see you guys in the next one. You're awesome.